There's something about Blackwater Lake that makes your skin crawl the moment you step near it. The locals say the lake was cursed long before their grandparents were born, but no one knows exactly how or why. Some say it was a sacred place for an ancient tribe, desecrated by greed and betrayal. Others whisper about a lone fisherman who drowned there and now pulls anyone who dares disturb the water's surface into the depths. But no one has lived to tell the truth. All they know is that those who go there never come back. Henry and his 3 closest friends, Maya, Sam, and Olivia, didn't believe in curses. They were city kids, after all, used to the hum of neon lights and the constant buzz of traffic. Superstitions were just stories to them, bedtime tales to scare little kids into behaving. When they rented the old cabin by the lake for a weekend getaway, they laughed at the warnings from the locals. Stay away from the water after dark, the old woman at the gas station had said, her milky eyes wide with fear. It's not safe. Henry had smirked, brushing off her words as nonsense. The first night passed uneventfully. They grilled burgers, drank cheap beer, and played cards until the early hours. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, still and quiet, as if holding its breath. Olivia joked about going for a midnight swim, but Maya quickly shut the idea down. Come on, let's not tempt fate, she had said with a nervous laugh. They all agreed, though they wouldn't admit why the thought made their stomachs churn. By the second day, the lake's pull became harder to resist. Its dark surface seemed to ripple even when there was no wind, as though something beneath was stirring. Sam, ever the adventurer, decided to take the old rowboat out despite Maya's protests. It's just water, he said with a grin, pushing off from the dock. Henry joined him, unable to resist the challenge. Olivia and Maya stayed behind, watching nervously as the boat drifted farther and farther. The men rowed in silence at first, the only sounds being the creak of the oars and the gentle lapping of water against the boat. But then, halfway across the lake, the air changed. It grew heavy, suffocating, as if an unseen weight was pressing down on them. The water beneath them turned unnaturally still, like a sheet of black glass. This feels wrong, Henry muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam shrugged, but even his usual bravado seemed to falter. And then they saw it. A ripple, far too large to be a fish, spreading outward from the center of the lake. Henry gripped the oars tighter, his knuckles white. We should head back, he said, his voice trembling. But before Sam could respond, the boat lurched violently, as if something massive had struck it from below. They both cried out, clutching the edges to keep from falling overboard. Back on the shore, Olivia and Maya heard the commotion. They ran to the dock, their eyes straining to see in the dim light. Henry! Sam! Olivia shouted, her voice echoing across the lake. But the boat was nowhere to be seen. The water was calm again, eerily so, as if nothing had happened. Panic set in as the minutes dragged on with no sign of their friends. Just when they were about to call for help, the rowboat emerged from the darkness, drifting aimlessly. Henry was slumped over, soaked to the bone, but alone. Sam was gone. They pulled him onto the dock, shaking him awake. His eyes were wild, filled with a terror they'd never seen before. It took him, Henry stammered, his voice barely audible. Something in the water, it took Sam. No amount of questioning could get him to say more. He just kept repeating the same words, over and over. The rest of the night was a blur. The police were called, but their search turned up nothing. No body, no sign of struggle, nothing to explain what had happened. The officers chalked it up to an accidental drowning, but the group knew better. Maya wanted to leave immediately, but Henry insisted on staying. We can't just leave him out there, he said, his voice hoarse. Against their better judgment, they agreed to stay one more night. Henry didn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out at the lake, clutching a flashlight like a lifeline. He could feel it watching him, whatever it was. The whispers started just after midnight, faint and distant at first, like the wind rustling through the trees. But they grew louder, more distinct. Henry, the voice was Sam's, calling out from the water. Help me. He bolted upright, heart pounding. Against every instinct screaming at him to stay put, he grabbed the flashlight and headed outside. The night was impossibly dark, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. He could barely see his own hands as he made his way to the dock. The lake was calm, its surface reflecting the faint glow of the cabin's porch light. But then he saw it, a figure standing waist-deep in the water, facing away from him. "Sam?" Henry called out, his voice cracking. The figure turned slowly, and his blood ran cold. It was Sam, but his eyes were empty, his skin pale and bloated. He raised a hand, beckoning Henry to come closer. "Help me," Sam repeated, his voice distorted, as if it were coming from underwater. Henry stepped back, shaking his head. "This isn't real," he whispered to himself. But the figure began to wade closer, water rippling unnaturally around it. Henry turned and ran, his flashlight flickering as he stumbled back to the cabin. He locked the door behind him, his chest heaving, but the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, until they were coming from every direction. Maya and Olivia found him curled up in the corner, muttering incoherently. They didn't know what to do. They just wanted to survive the night and leave this cursed place behind. But as dawn approached, they realized Henry was missing. The door was wide open, the flashlight discarded on the porch. They found him by the lake, staring out at the water. "Henry, we need to go," Maya said, grabbing his arm. But he didn't respond. He just kept staring, his lips moving silently. Olivia screamed as she followed his gaze. The lake was no longer still. Dark shapes writhed just beneath the surface, their forms barely visible but unmistakably human. And then, without warning, Henry walked into the water. They tried to stop him, but his strength was unnatural, his determination unyielding. He disappeared beneath the surface, the water swallowing him whole. They stood frozen, too terrified to move, as the lake returned to its unnatural calm. Maya and Olivia didn't wait another second. They ran to the car and drove until the cursed lake was far behind them. They never spoke of what happened, not to each other, not to anyone. But they knew the truth, Blackwater Lake wasn't just cursed. It was alive, hungry, and it had claimed 2 of their friends. So, if you ever hear stories about a beautiful, secluded lake that's perfect for a weekend escape, think twice. Some places are better left alone. And remember, when you're lying awake at night, wondering what lurks in the darkness, there are some questions you don't want answered. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Bedtime Horror Stories for more spine-tingling tales. Sleep tight, if you can.